Now, Senator Roberts.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for appearing again, General Campbell. Looking at the Afghanistan Inquiry Implementation Oversight Panel report, Defence tried to keep this report secret, blocking Freedom of Information requests. It was only when the Senate, on my motion, ordered it to be produced that we've seen it. And we can see why, in my opinion, General Campbell, you wanted to keep this a secret, given what it said about your response to the Brereton inquiry. I'm going to read quite extensive quotes from it, but it's important to have this information on the record given your previous denial of command responsibility. Quote, "Looking through an organisational lens, the assessment of accountability and responsibility starts at the top. More senior officers have to take some level of responsibility for what goes wrong in their organisation, or at least for any circumstances or policies that permitted or facilitated it. If no one at an appropriate level of authority knew anything about this misconduct, that is an organisational failure in itself." End of quote. Next quote. The panel considers, this is the oversight panel, the panel considers that the failure to look closely at the collective accountability and responsibility of Defence's most senior leaders continues to generate resentment and anger amongst veterans, soldiers and their families, which is likely to last for a long time. End of quote. And I can vouch for that. We've had many servicemen, current and former, contact us. Next quote. It is a misuse of that Special Forces capability to employ them on a long-term basis to conduct what are essentially conventional military operations. End of quote. Quote. The history and legacy of former Special Forces members is unjustifiably tarnished. And that's by the Brereton report and its handling. End of quote. General Campbell, you have refused to accept command responsibility or accountability for allegations despite wearing a medal for your command. You were a senior officer at one point, commander of all forces in the Middle East. Will you ever take responsibility for your organisational responsibility instead of just throwing loyal soldiers under the bus?
Thank you, Senator. Let's start at the beginning of your comments. You're incorrect to suggest that in some way I or Defence attempted to withhold the Oversight Panel's final report to the Minister. The Oversight Panel had throughout its duties access to an unredacted view of the Brereton report. That meant that its work needed to be referred to the Office of the Special Investigator to ensure that in their work there was no concerns by that office that anything in their report might in any way impinge upon their investigations and considerations for the potential for further legal action. Once that was done, the report was able to be provided both to the Minister and with confidence to the Minister that the Office of the Special Investigator had no concerns for its public release, and the report was publicly released. So I guess that's conspiracy number one out of the way. With regard to command accountability...
With due respect, General...
Senator, we'll just let the witness first finish their answer and then you'll have an opportunity to ask a follow-up question.
With regard to command accountability, as has previously been given in testimony here by myself and a number of my colleagues, the consideration of command accountability has been developed and completed at the level of Defence and my responsibilities, and has been passed to the Minister for his consideration. That remains under consideration by the Minister, and in due course the Minister will advise of decisions in that regard. The Oversight Panel's report was very much appreciated and well received by Defence, and it reflected on the experience and provides some very useful insights into both the events that occurred the manner of its response and the efforts we have gone to in reform and in delivery of now 139 of the 143 recommendations of the Brereton inquiry. Thank you.
Thank you. Minister, given what General Campbell said, why did the government withhold that document, the Senator's access to that document, the oversight report?
I think, as has already been indicated to you, it was necessary to seek advice from the Office of the Special Investigator as to whether or not the release of that report would in any way compromise their work. When that advice was received, the material was provided to the Senate.
Thank you. General, you're still wearing bars on your chest, the Distinguished Service Cross, that you claim for either being in action, which you never were, or for your command of troops in the Middle East. You've previously tried to strip 3,000 soldiers of their citation. You're still trying to strip other soldiers of their medals. Why do you get to keep Afghanistan medals while you try to have them stripped from soldiers?
Senator, I make no claims with regard to the Distinguished Service Cross, which was awarded to me for service in Afghanistan and the Middle East more generally.
Okay, I just want to close the chapter on your responses to my questions in the past about the search and rescue operation of the MRH-90 Taipan crash in the Whitsundays. You'll recall I first asked about this in October, and we had an exchange in February about whether the answers were satisfactory. Missing from the information you gave me was that after the crash, around 11 p.m. at night, HMAS Adelaide continued to sail in the opposite direction towards a photo shoot 140 nautical miles away. When I produced a photo that you deleted from the Defence Force deleted from the Defence website, General Campbell and Vice Admiral Hammond tried to tell me that HMAS Adelaide would be unable to help due to its size and too many vessels already at the search and rescue. You later clarified that it actually was tasked to search and rescue eventually. Why did you delete the images of the photo shoot from your website? And why have we gone through this back and forth for 8 months now? Was it just too embarrassing for you to admit that you let a useful boat with helicopters on board sail away to a photo shot instead of immediately helping with the search and rescue mission when it was assumed those men were still alive?
Thanks, Senator. I'll have to take the bulk of your question on notice, but with regard to the photo shoot, I neither directed nor have knowledge of the claim that you are making that photographs were deleted from the Defence photo site, and we'll need to take that on notice to understand whether or not and under what circumstances any photographs were or may have been removed.
And also, thank you for that. I'm happy to have that taken on notice, and also the circumstances around the deployment of Adelaide.
Yes, I'll take that on notice, Senator.
Thank you. Onto your combined Special Forces selection process. Reports from the ground indicate from 270 candidates, only 13% or 37 were selected for all Special Forces groups. Is it time to admit this ridiculous idea of yours that the troops don't like for combined selection has been a massive failure at the expense of millions of dollars with worse outcomes?
Thank you again, Senator. I'd like to just correct the record. You speak of it as my ridiculous idea. It is a well thought out approach being developed by the Army, and I don't lay claim to it, Senator. In terms of the outcomes of it, I would refer to the Chief of Army.
Senator, can I just confirm what your specific question is?
On your combined Special Forces selection process, reports from the ground indicate from 270 candidates, only 13% or 37 were selected for all Special Forces groups. And you're having trouble recruiting for the Special Forces groups, you're having trouble recruiting for the Army in general. Is it time to admit that this is a failure? The troops are telling us it is.
Well, Senator, that may be someone's characterisation. That's not our experience. It's true that there are high attrition rates in any Special Forces selection. That's a characteristic. What we're much better at doing now is understanding the reasons for that, and the preliminary assessment that I received just last week in terms of one of the key contributing factors was the physical preparation. So we need to lead in and help our people to follow the physical preparation to give them the best chance of completing successfully or not being able to, or not being withdrawn at own request or because they can't meet a particular physical standard.
Wow.
There are, of course, a whole range of other aspects for assessment as well. So, yes, you're correct in terms of the low numbers that were selected. That was characteristic when there were separate selection courses. This was the first of the common selection courses, and we're going through an after-action review process now to understand what it was that worked, what didn't work, and how we need to adapt it in the future. If we're going to just add a final point, and that's in terms of the reason why we're doing this, and it goes to some of the points that were in the Independent Oversight Panel's report to the Deputy Prime Minister that you referred to in your earlier questioning, and that is to address some of the outcomes that we've been working on for the last 10 years in terms of the findings from the Brereton inquiry, and in particular role clarity among units, and also making sure that we had good working relationships between the units in the command.
Before asking my last question, the Chair's given me the wind-up. You're not lowering standards. You're just giving soldiers an opportunity to meet the standards.
No, they're quite high standards, as you'd appreciate.
But your response
Senator.
is not to drop standards, your response is to help soldiers meet the high standards.
Yes, that is the approach right across the board, not just for Special Forces selection. So for anybody who puts their hand up for Special Forces selection, whether that's as an operator, an integrator or an enabler, they have a thing called a Special Forces entry test, which tests a whole range of things, including some physical standards. To set those people up for success, we provide them with a physical training preparation program that is specifically designed to ensure that they can or have the best chance of meeting the standards that are required in that Special Forces entry test.
Thank you. Minister, what we've seen recently under General Campbell's command is that the SAS regiment has been decimated with huge amounts of discharges after they were thrown under the bus. The combined Special Forces selection has been an abysmal failure, according to troops we've listened to. The MRH-90 helicopter kept flying until 4 men were killed in a crash. General Campbell is wearing a Distinguished Service Cross, which is probably illegal from what we've highlighted in previous estimates. The OSI has spent $100 million to lay a single war crimes charge and no convictions. The force is in a recruitment crisis going backwards. We're 5,000 personnel under strength. The Navy will have the least capable the surface fleet has had in more than 50 years for the next 10 years. Minister, what will you do to restore defence capability?
Well, Senator Roberts, there are so many misinformed statements in that question that it's hard to know where to begin. Perhaps I can say that there is very little of your characterisation of the current state of things that I accept, but I will tell you what it is that we are doing. This institution was subjected to a circumstance where there were many defence ministers on and off. During the last government, there was chaos and dysfunction, and we are working to resolve that. We are taking defence seriously, unlike the coalition. We We'll see spending in defence reach 2.3% of GDP over the next decade, beyond the trajectory that we inherited. We're investing $330 billion through the new integrated investment program. We are developing a comprehensive workforce strategy to improve recruitment and retention. We have put in place the pathway to acquire nuclear-powered submarines. We are buying the guided weapons that we need to hold adversaries at risk. We are investing in the surface fleet. We have handed down the 2024 National Defence Strategy. And I understand, Senator Roberts, that in the period that I have represented the government in here, you have consistently come here and levied attacks on senior personnel. I am surprised that that is the approach that you have adopted, to personally attack officials. We are happy to discuss the policy settings and will always answer questions in relation to that. My preference would be that we stick to the policy settings and perhaps refrain just a little from the very personal attacks that are too frequently offered towards staff and officials.
Minister,
Thank
we
you,
have
Minister.
a crisis in the army.
I need to move
We have a
on the
crisis in the
call. I'm
army.
sorry, Senator Roberts, but